Welcome to your carrier update brought to you by PowerFleet. I'm here with the one and only Zach Strickland. Zach, what do you have for us today?
All right, Anthony. So we talked about our tender volume index being relatively flat. So that's what continues to happen here, but it's still it's very close to that peak level. Go back to November, December there, you can see that we're really not that far below that 16K plus that we hit right around Thanksgiving, et cetera. And then of course, we settled down into the months of January and February before the winter weather event. We're still well above where we were in January, February. So a lot of pressure on the freight market right now. Tender rejection rates, however, are starting to settle down. We've come below the 24% market point for the first time since February. So it's not, everybody's kind of settling in. It's a little unusual to see this happen at this point in May. We start to get closer to the Memorial Day holiday. Capacity starts to come offline, people scheduling vacations and whatnot. So we're not seeing that big movement upward just yet. It has been a bit of a rocky ride coming up and down through the last month and a half or so. But again, demand's still extremely high right now. So we're seeing the same amount of volumes, but carriers are simply in better positions throughout the country. So let's take a look at the map up next to see where they are in better positions. And the Atlanta market obviously sticking out right here. But you got Little Rock and Nashville, Memphis, et cetera. All this little area that was so active in the early parts of May. The Southeast, for instance, you see Jacksonville, all in the red. That's an indication that we're seeing a reduction in tender rejection rates. So capacity is simply becoming a little bit more prevalent in these areas. And what do you know? Out there on the West Coast, Ontario, back in blue again, the Southern California area, we talk about it, this kind of seesaw battle of where capacity is going in the United States. And you're either one place or another. You can't maintain, and that's one of the things that we're talking about when we're looking at that tender volume index. If it's not reducing, capacity is not coming online very fast, very quickly right now. So they're either covering one area or the other. By the time they get to the East Coast, they've abandoned the West Coast, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. But overall, capacity is starting to settle in. Carriers are seemingly in better positions than they were over than they have been over the last several months.
So Zach, sounds like it's not exactly an increase in capacity, but more of a shifting in capacity.
Yeah, it's more they're just better able to cover their contracted freight. So they're getting their network set up. We've seen a relatively consistent flow of volume over the last couple of months. We know that it's coming in through the port areas. We had this huge disruptive event in the middle of February where we had a surge of demand and volume came back online. I think that actually motivated shippers to get on their spring shipping schedules a little bit sooner than they wanted to. But in the meantime, it's kind of like the gas shortage stuff. It's like we need that capacity, so we want to go ahead and get on it while we can to make sure that we have everything for the summer volume. And that may be a factor here in the next few weeks. We're talking about Memorial Day. Everybody tends to have this regular seasonal rhythm when they ship. It's like, oh, I need to start shipping my freight before Memorial Day. I take a vacation, and then we have this seasonal push through June into July. A lot of freight, moving across the country, et cetera. So it may have happened that this was an early, warm weather peak season that we just experienced as everybody was kind of pushed into, out of season patterns. And we look at the Atlanta market right here, which again, this has been an active area of the country, Atlanta, because of the Port of Savannah. And that's where a lot of this freight has been coming through over the last little bit. You've got our outbound tender volume index here. You see, this is a concerning factor for any carriers operating out of the Atlanta market. We've got our tender volumes increasing while tender rejection rates are declining. So that means that this tender rejection rate is not safe by any means. Capacity is definitely not safe. We're seeing a surge of volume. Carriers are simply able to cover more of that volume than they have been in the past. And Atlanta's been extremely volatile here over the last couple of months. And the southern tier of the United States, this is their time of year to ship a lot of freight.
So it sounds like you said carriers in a better position, but this pull forward, do you think this is going to be a trend throughout the year as we see typical seasonal patterns pulled forward just to kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a little bit of a pull forward, but I think that's going to be the consistent trend. We have that stable amount of volume, and then as carriers are not, anything that gets disrupted to their networks, we're going to see things kind of bouncing all over the place. If we go to the Milwaukee market, for instance, that was one of the blue markets. This is the hottest spot of the country right now, Milwaukee. So we talk about Southern California, Atlanta, back and forth. Well, then there's all these other markets sitting out in the United States right now that carriers are not necessarily super focused on. Milwaukee is not a huge market, but it is a pretty decent sized market in relation to the rest of the country. We've got the outbound tender volume index in purple and the tender rejection index in blue here, and it's 25.92%. That's well above the market average. So if you are a carrier out there and you see this tender rejection rate spike out of the Memorial Day or out of Milwaukee market, that's one of the most significant increases that we've had over the last week in tender rejection rates. So that means that spot market activity is going to be booming. You're going to have a good chance, accept more freight into this market. Normally it's a short haul market, but all over. You've got lanes all over the place that are increasing out of the Milwaukee market right now. So definitely going to have to stay on top of things this summer as demand continues to keep pressure on those markets.
Excellent, Zach. Thank you so much. Thanks for this carrier update brought to you by PowerFleet. We'll be checking back in with you in just a few minutes.